On Charlie, take one.
Marker.
Everybody, how are you, everyone? Hello, good morning. I'm Kira Seibler. I am proud to be AFMX's Director of Operations, and so delightful to see everybody here today. Thank you for joining us. So before we get started with our first center stage conversation, which is marketing for Moviemakers, I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the Board of Directors and our entire volunteer staff. Welcome to AFMX's 10th anniversary edition. Yes, it's a long road. A special thank you to our executive director, who is in the audience, Mr. Ivan Weiner, who helps put this together. So thank you, Ivan. Okay, so before we start this next event, we would like to thank our presenting sponsors, the AFME Foundation, Albuquerque Film Office and Film Liaison, Cindy McCrossan, Albuquerque The Magazine, Bernalillo County Commissioner Stephen Michael Quezada, Teresa Terena, Italia Olive Oil, Comcast NBC Universal, iHeartMedia, Inspirato Productions, Larry Schwartz and Wells Fargo Advisors, Jauska Road Productions, Matucci's Baroa, Real Solutions Airport Meet and Greet, Sukmani Designs, Sunny 505, the Baker Law Group, University of New Mexico Film and Digital Arts, Venturi Realty Group, Quiet Media, and Yamaha Entertainment Group. So, for today's center stage conversation, you will be able to ask questions through today's session, but more information will be given through our moderator, who I am very proud to present. So our moderator this morning is Lorraine Montez. Lorraine Montez is a producer, a writer, an actor, a phenomenal human, and with over 25 years of industry experience in narrative film, streaming series, and theater. She has produced several narrative feature films, including The Hollow One, acquired for worldwide distribution. She is currently in development for the feature film Tramp. She's also a prolific writer. Lorraine is a 2022 Stowe Writing Lab recipient for the streaming series marked as Other, which she co-wrote with Kira Seibler. I should read the bios before I speak, huh? Lorraine is a member of the Producers Guild of America and SAG-AFTRA. Please welcome our moderator and our guests.
Thank you, Kira. She was giving me a look because I worked her name into the intro. All right, so before we get started today, I'd like to introduce our very prestigious and awesomely genuine guests, executive film producer and CEO Frank Donner. Hello. Frank is the founder of Black Box BLKBX creative group. He has extensive expertise in both creative and content technology services, and prior to BLKBX, he was president of Electro Films Digital Studios, a multinational industry leader in technology-enabled media services for the entertainment industry. In other words, your future. As a film producer, Frank's produced the Academy Award-nominated documentary Deliver Us from Evil and the feature from film Between, which was selected for the highly competitive Sundance Film Festival that we all want to get in. Yes! Nice going, Frank. Frank continues to serve as an active member of the Producers Guild of America. Woo-hoo, Frank, one of my own. He is extremely passionate about story-driven cinema and is so excited about the new content creation division of the company, BLKBX Originals. Studio executive producer Karen Criswell. Hello, Karen. Hi. served as a senior VP of operations for a little company you might recognize called DreamWorks. Ah. She ran strategy and operations for the teams behind a slate of interactive games, music development deals, narrative films, and television productions that occurred during her 18-year tenure. Karen's time at the studio included 3 Best Picture Oscars for American Beauty, amazing film, Gladiator, amazing film, and A Beautiful Mind, another amazing film. She left in 2014 to pursue development of her independent film company, Concept Films, that's with a K, Koncept, and has provided production consulting and creative work in documentary, film, and emerging new media. She lives in Taos. Karen pursues stories from underrepresented voices that provoke positive change with a variety of collaborators, including BLKBX and Film Forward. Hello, Karen, and welcome. And our last panelist that we're very fortunate to have here today is a gentleman named James Glover. He's a senior content strategist director at Switches and Modes Creative Media. He leads a team of professional artists and producers to develop content for major companies, networks, and creative agencies around the planet. Actively develops creative content for clients such as W Hotels, BMW, Rakuten, did I pronounce that right? Yeah. Thank you. Bodum Bose, Bet, MTV, and more. Prior to his senior content strategist position, James was a social media producer with the content team for Fox Broadcasting. He was hands-on with the creation of original social content in support of current shows on the Fox broadcast channels, and the content created has been seen by millions across multiple verticals on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. James has also worked with such well-known brands as L'Oreal, Viacom, and Fox Sports. And guess what? He's a UNM graduate. Go Lobos! So very quickly before you start, I'm just going to give you a rundown on our session format. Panelists are going to talk to you about marketing, discuss the importance of data, and provide information on how to create a strong, detailed marketing plan, and talk about your story. What's important? Why the story? Why this? Why you? Why now? So I'm now going to turn it over to Karen Criswell. She's going to take it from here, and we have some fun discussions ahead. Karen?
Is this on? Oh, fantastic. See, technology's great when it works, right? Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Before we get started and kind of launch into marketing, why it matters to you for your projects, we wanted to do kind of a little bit of an informal poll. So I think we see a lot of students in the audience today. How many of you are students? Very cool. How many professionals in the industry? Have a few of that. Got a good portion of those too. Fantastic. This is a great audience. So now I want to take a little bit of an informal poll about how many of you have ever written a script? Great. How many are you developing a project? Either a film, feature, documentary, TV pilot? And how many of you in the audience today have ever started your marketing campaign? That's better than expected. You guys are doing great. And what we're going to go through today is sort of when you start your marketing campaign, why you want to start it early. You almost need to start it these days the second you start to put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard to write a script, because your story is your most valuable commodity. So we're going to go into a lot of that today, but we're going to start first. I think Frank is going to kind of walk us back a little bit into the history of marketing, how it's changed, and why it's so important for you today to have that in your toolbox, in your kit as you develop your creative projects. Frank?
Ooh, thank you. Good morning, everybody. You know, what I love seeing in the room is a lot of students and young people, because Black Box Creative Group wouldn't be here without your guys' minds. So when we started the company in 2008, 2009, we do a lot of internships and mentorships. So it's because you guys are on the pulse of often what's happening, and you guys are watching content. You're on social media platforms. I'm just saying, when we go through this, pay attention, because if you're interested in anything in the filmmaking or marketing process, there's great opportunities, and you guys are at a really good time. But as Karen said, taking a step back, you know, when we entered into the marketing realm in 2008, actually it was a little bit different. As you know, Lorraine was saying, early on, my partners and I, when we were looking to form a company, we were looking at a lot of different things in 2008. So we had raised the money, and we were deciding on which way we wanted to do, because a lot of my background comes in heavy technology and post-production and filmmaking process, working at places like Universal. So I wasn't a marketing expert by any stretch of the imagination back then. So we looked at, does anybody know what a DVD is? Raise your hand. So we looked at a DVD company, and this was in 2008, and then we looked at a post-production company. And back then, DVD was like, okay, it was still relevant, but we found out it was a cul-de-sac industry, meaning it was going to end sometime soon. And Netflix, of course, proved us that we were moving into a world of streaming. And then we looked at the post-production at that time, and this is very hardware-driven, very technological, and we thought, well, that was probably not a way. So then we found ourselves in something called a trailer company. So in marketing terms, raise your hand if you know what a trailer is. Okay, for those of you that don't, it was a preeminent device to use to get people excited about a film. They used to start back when I was getting in it, one man in a world. That's where it started. And they had this guy who was the voice of God. He was like, you remember him, right? He was like the voice of God, one man. And he was great. And he introduced some of the biggest films. And he passed away some years ago, an extraordinary human being. So we bought this trailer company that was doing cutting down trailers and creating content that would seed into the marketplace to get awareness, right? So in that time, and when we jumped into the marketplace in 2008, we acquired this trailer company. The preeminent things to get people's attention was audio-visual, AV, a trailer, or some visual medium, and print, a billboard or something you see, and you're like, that's it. And the studio executives that were at the big studios, they wanted to roll down a boulevard and make sure they saw that billboard of their film. So then we got into the marketplace in 2008, 2009 with this trailer company, and things started to change. There was a paradigm shift happening, and we were right smack in the middle of it. And guess what that paradigm shift? Anybody want to raise their hand and tell me what came into the world around 2008, 2000? You, sir. Yes! All right, give him a cup of coffee. Social media. Do you guys, who knows what social media is? Oh, of course. Okay, you with the hoodie on. Do you have a MySpace still? Have you used Periscope? Oh, exactly. Does anybody know what that is? Yes, you do. Oh, come on, don't age yourself. So these were things that came into the marketplace very early on. And they were devices in social media that were at the early stages, like Facebook still is today, that's become this mega, powerhouse. But these technological devices would come in, and as a marketing company, we remained agnostic. So that means we didn't really care what was coming. Things like Periscope were a really cool thing. Look up Periscope. I thought it was, you remember that because we were at South by Southwest, this live feed. We were like, this is so awesome. And now it's gone.
And that was just 2016. Like
Exactly.
2017, like it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
It just up and down.
It changes. And so now, who could tell me what you think the most powerful social media tool today is? You. TikTok. Yes.
Correct.
Raise your hand if you have a TikTok, right? If you're on TikTok. Okay. Yeah, I would imagine. And you guys probably know a little bit about that. When TikTok came in and the company ByteDance pushed it, we were like, wow, look at this new platform. Again, now we're at this another shift in time. So as I brought you through this arc of history, what was then and what the studios were using to create this, this attention-grabbing device, the social media became like, it was mom and dad, it was like AV and print. And they dominated for so long. And then this angry teenager came in. Anybody know what an angry teenager is? They came in and destroyed, it just upended anything. And executives at studios, at major company was like, wait, what is this thing? This social media thing? Like, well, I don't understand it. Like, how is it gonna get me what they call bums in seats? And people were trying to convince the studios that this was a very powerful medium. It took them a long time because they still wanted the big giant billboard. But now social media has changed it. That's why today it's so important for you guys in the audience. And again, if you are interested in this business, you guys are the future generation. I always like to tell my own kids, it's like, I may be older, but you guys are in front of us. You're going to see powerful changes with data and analytics and changes. So that is what our industry is. And now we're again at this paradigm shift for filmmakers today, storytellers. It is the most incredible time. Any one of you could write some short story or a feature, and it can change the world. And so that's what we're here to talk to you about. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a landscape.
Yeah, I can tell you that the advent of social media made film marketing a lot harder. It used to be a lot easier whenever you could just put a billboard up and people would be like, oh, I'm gonna go see that, you know? And now we've got billboards in our hand, you know? And so now it's even more important that your story, your idea, be cohesive and thought through, and that you understand it to the degree that you can. So I'll ask you this. How many of you have ever done film marketing before? Okay, I don't see very many hands. How many of you have ever had a great idea and you ran and told somebody about it? Okay, that's marketing. If you can convince one person that your idea is cool and fun and worth pursuing, it works the same on down the line, okay? Because a good idea will find an audience. Good content will find an audience. Good story will find an audience. And that's really what we're here to do, is to help a good story find its audience. And that's really about connecting to the people that it pertains to, right? Because every story has an audience. You told it to somebody and they liked it. That's your audience, you know? And the more that you can start to understand your story and understand your audience, the further you can go with it.
Why it matters. I think that kind of going really far back in the evolution of humankind, I think one of the things that sets human beings apart is our ability to tell story. It is how we educate, it's how we learn, it's how we grow, it's how we create. And I think that marketing really does boil down to telling a good story. And we start storytelling with kids when they're still unable to read. And the comprehension for everything comes from good storytelling. Your stories are so important because every one of us has a unique perspective on the world. And marketing it to the most optimum audience that you can get does matter, because your stories, as Frank mentioned earlier, can change things, whether it's in your family, in your community, in your city, your state, in your country, or in the world itself. And I know you've all seen viral videos on TikTok or things that go viral on Instagram or Facebook or all these social media platforms. You know, my niece the other day just did something about painting an antique globe that she found, and she was joking, and it went viral on TikTok because she said she was going to paint it a really weird color.
Karen,
Something that simple.
Sorry
makes a
to
difference.
interrupt.
Yes.
That brings up a question.
Sure.
How do marketers make something go viral?
It can be chance. She was not expecting that. But I think it's being authentic and truthful to who you are and putting out a voice that is unique in the world, and other people who are interested in the things you are, they glom onto that. And it can be random. This thing with my niece was very random, but I think when you're telling good stories, it's like James said, one person will want to listen, then two people want to listen, and actually once people start to gravitate, then it pulls in more people and more people and more people. If you've ever gone by a venue and you see a long line out the door, you're like, what are all those people there for? Is it the new iPhone sales or something else going on? And we congregate. We come together in community. That's who we are as human beings. And marketing helps build that momentum. And it comes down to the storytelling. It comes down to bringing people into your community and then growing that community with more like-minded people. You do it when you form, friendships and classes and organizations in school. It's the same thing. That's marketing and community building.
I just want to add on to that really quick. If you start your marketing campaign with the intention to make something go viral, then you've prioritized the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. Because there's almost no way to guarantee that anything will go viral. I've made stuff that everyone was convinced, oh, this is going to be a big hit. It's going to go viral. Nobody saw it. And then I make some random video about Michael Jordan versus LeBron, and I wake up the next morning to 10 million views. You know what I mean? Like, you never know what it's going to be that hits. And I think in that situation, right, we can't guarantee that it's going to go viral. So the most important thing is that we start with what the core of the idea is. What makes this good? What makes this something somebody's going to want to watch? And if you start with that, good content finds an audience, right? So if it goes viral, awesome. That's the serendipity. You know what I mean? Because there's no way to force it. And when it happens, it's really cool. And the response is neat, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point, and take it off from where you both were. You know, who's heard of the term algorithm? Yeah, okay, and, you know, data and analytics. You know, how many of you watch Netflix? Right? And so we know sometimes when we're now watching Netflix, they have a profile for us, right? You know, if you have multiple users at home, you have 3 or 4 people on there, and you're going to pick your name, perhaps, and you're going to look at something, and they're going to find out kind of what you like to watch. You know, again, through the marketing and the history, we've never had these tools before like we have now, but we also haven't had as much, what? Content. And so marketing is even more crucial. And so when I was listening about the, you know, talking about the viral videos, you know, it's really hard to make something go viral, which is by the very word itself. It just happens. But we do know when you guys are on TikTok and things like that, all of a sudden you have all these people that are looking at something that they might be in tune with you with, right? And so that algorithm's going to pick up and throw it into another world. And I'll wake up like Karen one day and say, wow, look at all these people. So again, the tools at our disposal are far more powerful than they've ever been, which is also helping because there is such a plethora of content out there. So especially for the studios, we are looking to rise above and put that in the conscious minds of the viewers to say, watch this. So as marketers, we got to be sharper than ever, and we got to start focusing on it. So not that long ago, when data and analytics were coming into the world of marketing, and our company was now hiring somebody called a data analytics person, and we were using the term data-driven creative, which I really didn't like, because it didn't sound so very creative to me. It was data-driven. It was a tool, and we opted to continue to work in that realm, and of course not, you know, just turn a blind eye to technology that could advance it. But we did decide that, you know, we still wanted to have creative front forward. We are a creative marketing agency, and that's where we ply our trade, which is why we come to people like you that are interested in, because you guys are going to have the fresh ideas. Again, you guys are on the bleeding edge. So if you're interested, again, it's a great place to be. So think of those different areas of technology that you're even touching today, because they will come to use tomorrow.
So let's say that I decide to be a film producer, and I get approached with a script. The story seems really solid. Seems like it'll sell. I'm moving into development, which is what we do before pre-production. And in that development stage, how soon will I need my marketing?
Immediately. The minute you have an idea, it's like James said, you have a good idea, you go tell somebody about it, and they go, wow, that's a cool idea. You've already started marketing. And your greatest resources are the content that you're already creating to create your script, your storyline. You'll get into development, you'll start to develop a pitch deck, which is sort of an abbreviated visual coloring book that you're going to give to studio executives or to anybody who might want to give you money for your film or your project. And you're going to utilize, and you're going to continue to utilize that. And every little bit of content that you create, whether it's a log line, which is sort of your top line, 25 words or less about your story, whether it's what they call the elevator pitch, which is like a 2 to 3 minute version of your story that you could pitch to somebody in an elevator. All of these little bits and pieces, images that you put on an idea board around your script, or how you want your production to look, or the color scheme that you use. All of that is content. It is all marketing. It is all resource for you to use online, in decks, with presentations, with talking to crew people or DPs that you want to bring on, or actors that you want to be involved in your project. Everything, every little ounce of content that you create or use to ideate or brainstorm during the entire process of your project is marketing. It's fuel for your marketing campaign, and that makes it a valuable resource. And so I think that's kind of the gist of what you need is just to continue to build off of your original content. You don't have to go out and create a whole separate something, I guess is what I was trying to say. Marketing, people go, oh, what's marketing? Marketing is what you're already doing. You're already pushing an idea, a concept, a creative idea that you believe passionately in, and that's your fuel. That is your fuel for a marketing campaign.
So let's call this case study number 1. And let's say that I've hired you guys to do all of this marketing and development and pre-production. How does it, or can it, or should it, actually influence the actual film? Like if you have visuals, is that easier for your DP or your director to take the visuals that you've created in marketing or that messaging and help pass it on to the crew to help get a solid idea of that vision?
I'll tell you a quick little story. There was an indie film that got made about 10 years ago, I guess, at this point. And it was like a post-apocalyptic. It was really cool. Like they had tons of really neat stuff, but because they had gotten their marketing team involved early, they worked in parallel to develop the prop cars, which were these really cool. They had spikes and flames and all this really neat stuff, right? But the marketing team was involved in that process because they knew early on, hey, we can take these cars on tour. We can go to the Sarasota Comic-Con and make a couple bucks taking pictures with this thing. And it snowballed, and it got to the point where they were so good at what they were doing because they had gotten started on it early enough that as the film was starting to be made, and then as the release was coming up and the trailer was coming out, people had some semblance of awareness. So it wasn't 10 years ago, but they had some semblance of awareness of what the picture was. And so now, think about when they took the Iron Throne on tour, right? People lined up for hours at the bookstore to take a picture of themselves in the Iron Throne. That was a premeditated, pre-planned marketing gimmick. Not gimmick. Gimmick's the wrong word. But
it's a gimmick.
Effort. It's a gimmick.
It's a word marketers don't use.
Strategy. Thank you. Yes. It was a pre-planned strategy because they knew that the iconography from the show was going to be germane to the audience. Right? So they brought it to the audience. Same with the cars for the apocalyptic movie. It's never too early to get involved. It's never too late to get started. The soonest you can get started is when you have the idea. The latest you can get started is after the movie's made. But the sooner you get started, the more success you're going to see.
Yeah, that's a good point. It was probably early on, maybe around 2013. One of our clients at Warner Brothers, and now he's at Netflix, Sean, was saying, he's looking at the marketing and what we were doing, and he was, saying that, that wow, it's really interesting that your company, starting in 2008. And now you're getting further and further backing into the process, the filmmaking process, meaning what you were saying, Lorraine. Like, we usually would come at the tail end after the project is finished and completed and, ready for distribution. So we're now getting involved. And filmmakers are now more savvy, especially somebody like Quentin Tarantino. We did a film called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And that was an active participation with Quentin and Sony and people. He's somebody that's really interested in seeing where this is going to head. But to James's point, you want to get involved as early as possible. And what Kieran said, you want to start thinking about it. As filmmakers, you have a lot on your plate, but you can utilize things. And we'll talk a little bit about different devices like experiential. These things that weren't around. But who's heard of Comic-Con? Who's been to Comic-Con? If you know the history of Comic-Con, it was comic books, right? And then it became this powerhouse place for brands and studios to come and activate things. And activation is, like what James said, is using something from the movie to explore something and experience something. So more than ever, there's, especially for companies like ours, it's a really fun time. It's like a play zone. And we'll talk a little bit later about brainstorming for marketing too and how we go about that. But it really is a good time to get as early as you can thinking about what your movie might be having some piece that would be a call of action or a call out.
Let's talk about case study number 2. And let's say that I've done a film and I haven't done any marketing on it. And I come to you and you all are used to dealing with that. But do you ever get shock from the filmmaker when they realize how much marketing they have to produce for distribution and beyond if they haven't started it ahead of time.
Their shock or ours?
Well, and I think part of the shock comes from how much marketing opportunity they've missed by not having started at the conceptualization stage and done all of this work. Because as you were mentioning earlier about, you know, these images and all of these things that you develop during production, those are your through line, and it's like what Frank had mentioned about brands. That's how you quote unquote brand your project, the look, the feel. If everything ties together, then it becomes a much more recognizable creative entity out in the marketplace, and that's how you grow your community and grow the people who are following you. And it may start at the conceptualization stage with just your family and friends, but it can grow. And so I think if the first thing would be, well, you've missed 8, 10, 6 months, you know, whatever, 8, 10 weeks, 6 months, a year, or however long it took you to build your project, you've missed that much time in marketing it. So now that we've missed that, where do we start from now? And I do think that I do a lot of budgeting and scheduling for film projects, and I would say, along with possibly insurance, legal, and accounting, marketing and publicity and PR people and how to make your project, even just to go to festivals, is a line item that is always lacking. And yes, there is some sticker shock because it does cost money to get your property out there. But there's a lot of really cool, innovative ways that like you can do as well that don't cost you a lot of money. And if you're lucky, you'll go viral, and that helps you get money.
I think I'd describe it. Marketing is resource intensive. Right, and so take a look at what your resources are. Resources can be cash that you can give to companies like ours, and we'll do it for you. But resources can also be utilizing the people that you already have in your filmmaking camp, right? You've got a DP, you've got an editor, you've got a motion graphics guy that did the cool title sequence for the movie. You have people at your disposal that are the equivalent of giving the money to us and having us do it with the same people, essentially. Only you understand your film better than I do. Forever you will understand it better than I will because you made the thing, right? There's no way that we can do as good a job as you can in understanding what you hope to get out of your film, right? Whatever you hope the audience to understand from your film, or whatever audience you hope finds your film, right? And so the earlier that you start to think about your resources, not your cash flow, because marketing can be wildly expensive, and it doesn't always have to be. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, just look at our price sheet and then just go from there. No, I'm kidding. But so essentially, like, you have a ton of resources at your disposal that you've already leveraged because you made the movie, right? These are all film professionals that are doing the same work that we're doing, effectively, because we're filmmakers. We just have a different format, right? We're doing marketing material. So it's important to us that whatever marketing material we put out tells a good story, looks good, sounds good, communicates well, right? Stuff that you've already accomplished with your film. And so if you start that process early enough, then you give yourself the best possible opportunity to have that be boiled down to its very best version. We worked on a movie this spring that premiered at Cannes. And we didn't get to see the movie until we had already had our first 3 meetings with them about this. So we were starting at an extreme deficit, and it took a great deal of effort and time from the team, a great deal of resources that the company paid to our company for us to catch up. And that can be an expensive endeavor. And it's unnecessary ultimately because you have the answers the whole time, you know? And I think that's really important to kind of make mention of, is that the utilization of your resources isn't strictly how much you have in your budget. You know?
Yeah, no, you brought up a good point. I just want to hone in on that too, which is the idea of, like, again, in the past, usually the filmmaker or director was not really that involved in the marketing. Mm-hmm. And more, to James's and Karen's point, is they're, you know, being involved because they want to make, you know, they have a better understanding of what marketing is, but they want to be involved because they know what their product is, and they have good ideas too. So they're far more, you know, when we're in brainstorming, they're far more hands-on than they've ever been, and that makes sense to me, you know, to be involved in your film because you know better, and maybe. And I can tell you, I'm sure many people in this audience know, there were films that came out, you know, and were finished and completed and had distribution and never saw the light of day for various reasons. One of my favorite films could have gone that way, And it's a film, if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It's called Whale Rider. It's a beautiful film.
Excellent.
It could have, yeah, exactly.
Very nice.
Beautiful film. It could have not been seen by as many people as it finally did get because of certain things. And I'm not saying that's all marketing, but marketing can enhance it, and the filmmakers can support that.
And something I want everybody here to remember is whether you're a filmmaker or a writer or you're going into marketing, your ideas are valuable and they are needed desperately, and people want to hear them. So if you've got an idea, work with it. If it turns out not to work, what's the worst that's happened? You've learned a lesson and you move on from there, right? But always remember, your creativity is your value, right? It's inherent in all of us. And it's no different when you're telling a story in a film or when you're telling a story with marketing. So if it's all right with my panel, I'd like to open it up to some Q&As from the audience now. Does anyone have questions?
When you go viral, what do you do?
Be very
go like
thankful.
this.
Jump up and down, do a happy dance, and then double down on whatever you did that worked. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that's good. You know, if something goes viral, and depending on how you want to use it, to Karen's point, doubling down, you know, just because something goes viral, it could have a shelf life. So you want to capitalize on it. Depending on where you're at, you might want to capitalize that and do something else to follow it up, but you want to keep that moving along.
That's a great question, because really that's whenever you have to take stock in what you did, right? What went viral? You got to look at your comments. You got to look at your the community management of a viral video or of a campaign. Look at your data. Look at where the people are from. Look at their other likes and interests and things like that. It can all be boiled down utilizing the resources that are within the apps. But then there's obviously like there's services and stuff like that, so it'll go further. But look at what you did and replicate what was working.
And also capitalize on engaging all of
Yeah.
those people who, and that's a lot of, you know, going through your comments, but you gotta really, like, that's how you build your online community, is really engage with every single person that helped you go viral.
You mean social media isn't just posting stuff out?
Yeah. Sorry?
Social media isn't just putting a post
Yeah.
out and letting it go?
No, but
Sometimes.
he brings up a good point, because again, in catching on what Karen said is, you know, something goes viral, all of a sudden you have a community, and what you do with that community is in the palms of your hand. So how you decide to work with them, and I think, you know, I'm just looking at something that went viral that we had been involved with, and you know, at 1.5 million views, right? And all of a sudden it's like, why is that? And then you start going down and looking at the comments and what people are saying, and I think you have a lot of, again, going back to the data, but it becomes a community. So great question. You're hired.
What can I do if my film doesn't make enough profit?
Every filmmaker in here is laughing.
The unfortunate news is that many, 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 many amazing creative film projects do not make a profit. However, if you strategize, whoever threw that out earlier, it's a great word, but if you work on a strategy about your project and really know your audience, this is where marketing comes in, then you know what resources you have available, and you sort of level the expectations around your project, and you reach for what you know is attainable, and then maybe a little more than that, and then maybe a little more than that. That way you keep yourself in a safe zone so you don't wind up in the poorhouse with your project, but that you find the audience that matches what you have available to market to them, whether that's friends and family, your social network, and you know, and again, it can grow with a viral video or something like that to that effect. So.
I was thinking on that question too, because it's both a marketing question sometimes and also just a personal thing. You know, that sometimes as filmmakers, there's certain of us that go into it to create something, and almost, you know, at the behest of thinking of the financial outcome. You know, a lot of documentaries have such powerful voices coming out, and often those filmmakers aren't thinking of, you know, making a boatload of cash. They want to impress an audience, but that's where also marketing can come in, is to get it out to the people. So it's a kind of a dual, you know, question, but a good one.
How would I start like a career in influencing people?
Good question.
Start a career as an influencer? That's a moving target. Truth be told, that's a moving target. We work a lot with influencers, and honestly, their value is starting to decline a little bit. But ultimately, it's about, so we're talking about marketing in the sense of like, if you've got a movie and an idea, and here's how you do it. The truth is, it's the same for influencers as well, because ultimately, you find a niche, right? And then you fill that niche to the nth degree that you can, till you are so known or so saturated in the market that you become, you add value to a project by being brought onto it, right? So like we, at a company that I used to work with, we used to work with like Straw Hat Goofy a lot, which is an influencer. He does like movie reviews and stuff like that. There is a tremendous amount of value in having paid somebody to do that for you, but his journey to get to that point didn't start with all of a sudden being worth us giving him $100,000 for a post. It started with it being valueless entirely, except it wasn't valueless to that person. And they built and they built and they built and they built until they had an audience, because ultimately, like, what influencers sell is attention, right? Is if you've got 1.5 million followers on your TikTok or something like that, the chances are if I give you my thing to show everybody, right? I'm gonna give you my movie, I want you to tell everyone about it. I'm paying for your audience. I'm paying for your authenticity, I'm paying for your connection with them, I'm paying for your influence over them. So you don't, like, it sounds such like a cruel way to say it, but like, you're not an influencer until you have people to influence. So you gotta go find those people first, you know what I mean? And that's a moving target, and who knows? I know a lot of people who have tried, and I know a lot of people who have not tried and found wild success inadvertently. There's a bit of a formula to it: posting regularly, understanding the algorithm, creating content that looks good and sounds good, and things like that. All the rules of filmmaking apply. The better you make it look, and the better you make it sound, the better you're able to communicate with your audience, the better you'll do, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the influencer, again, that's in our business, that was a relatively new thing too, as a marketing tool, because we do work with a lot of influencers. I don't know if anybody have heard of a term called unboxing. Okay, unboxing was something that we used for, say, Marvel or Disney, and it would be productized. In other words, we would get an influencer, and they would open something up that had features of it from the movie. And it was really it was like Christmas, you know, it was a beautiful thing. And so we had certain influencers that we would choose that had that. So to James's point, you know, starting an influencer, I think for sure, start looking at influencer companies, start looking at what makes you unique. There's a company called Jubilee, if anybody's heard of it, you know, great platform. You can check out, you know, what they're doing, but there's a lot of influencer companies. So I suggest just leaning into that, looking into that, and then also, you know, seeing what makes you unique and what area you might want to get into, because it's a really, again, it's still an interesting time in that area.
Staying current on the platform stuff too. Like Instagram's changing their algorithm every like couple months. So staying on top of the industry of it. Plus there's like management companies and stuff like that that can help you start to like make money off of it.
How do lawyers help filmmakers?
How do lawyers help filmmakers? They keep you out of jail. No, I'm kidding.
This is something that's kind of in my bailiwick. I've done a lot of producing, but lawyers are very important for you if you are getting investment. All investment in the United States has to follow the Securities and Exchange Commission protocols. And a lawyer drafts all of that paperwork so that you can legally accept that money into your accounts. And there's restrictions. You have to create a business account, a business entity, and your lawyers will help you do all of that. Some of it's boilerplate. Some of it can be done, you know, through like a organization online. But it does, as you get into more and more financing and into bigger and bigger film projects, you really do need an entertainment attorney to come on board and to help draft all of that for you. Because the last thing you want to have happen is to get all of this money, get your film done, and then have missed a step somewhere that prevents you from ever having it distributed. And that happens a lot more than you might think. And it is, yeah, you've got to have E&O insurance, which is errors and omissions. Without it, you cannot get distribution. You have to start that process again, everything needs to start at the beginning. If you get down the road quite a ways and then try to go backtrack, you can get it, but it is so much more painful. Start with your legal entity and all of your legal contracts and all of your legal paperwork at the beginning. If you're doing a feature film and you're gonna get investment, other than maybe from your parents or, even then you should probably do it. But if you're doing a big feature film project that's, $2 or $3 million, it's your first independent feature that you're either directing or producing or starring in or whatever, you need an attorney.
They also act as your fiduciary. They're the only ones that can negotiate on your behalf. Your agent and your manager cannot negotiate for you. So having a lawyer is critical because their only job is to protect you.
How did you get noticed?
How did you get noticed?
Oh, get noticed
Yes.
or in the movies? Oh, get noticed.
Like, get a name for yourself.
Mean each one of us personally?
Yes.
Okay.
I worked for Steven Spielberg. That kind of took care of it. No, that's actually kind of true. You do get associated with the people that you work with, and that's why it's always really good. But I also, one of the things that I learned, because I've been in the business for a long time, and I've done a lot of lectures with, students and things like that, is the people in this room right now who start out where you start out and who grow with you are the people who are going to be the Bob Zemeckis and the Cameron Crowes and the Steven Spielbergs of tomorrow. So all of the relationships you are building now with people in the industry, those are the relationships that you will have later. I did a feature film with someone I did theater with, that was very successful, and we won some awards, and we got streaming, and we did all these things. He and I have known each other for a very long time. We knew each other when we were kids, and basically, or very young adults. And we grew up in the industry together, and now he is a Directors Guild director and a really accomplished writer with a whole bevy of films under his belt. So I think relationships is one way in which you get noticed, is building those long-term relationships. It does not happen overnight. Even the overnight sensations usually will tell you that they've been working to get to be an overnight sensation for 15 or 20 years. Yeah. So it does take time, unless you're lucky. But you have to do all the same steps, build all the same relationships, because even if you become noticed overnight, if you want to sustain that career, you need to have all that foundation in place that you would if it's going to take you 5, 10, 15 years to get noticed. And just keep creating content. That is like the number one thing. Keep creating content, keep building relationships, keep nurturing your community, keep growing it every single day.
And show up. And if you say you're going to do something, do it. And if you can't do it, let people know.
And it's a good point, because you should get involved as early as you can in any of the process. And that gets you to meeting the people. I mean, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have my early stage friends. We've known each other a couple of years. But or something like this wonderful experience that AFMX is putting on. You're literally in the room with other filmmakers, and it's reaching across the aisle and working with somebody, or interning. I get out there and work on a project. There's a book, some of you may know of it, it's been around for a while, might be a little bit dated for some of you, but it's still relevant. It's called Shoot to Kill. Anybody read it? It's a great book, yeah. It'll show you the process, but a wonderful read if you get a chance. But it's really kind of in that word, networking, getting out there and working on a set or working with somebody and getting involved early.
Yep.
James, did you have something?
I wouldn't leave. I kept showing up, and I was incredibly fortunate in that I had a pretty sharp skill set coming out of college. I fell backwards into post-production. I made a movie and nobody wanted to edit it. And I was like, oh, I guess it's me then. And I was like, oh, this needs like a cool title sequence. I'll do that. And then I learned how to do motion graphics. And I'll tell you what, I sharpened my sword for as long as I was able to do that before I went out and ultimately put it to the test. I was always around. I worked on films where I helped my friends. I worked on their stuff. I got involved anywhere I could, but I was building something of my own for myself to try to go out and use, And ultimately, that's what led me to the beginnings of that. I was a very good editor. I was a very good motion graphics designer. and then they were like, oh, you produce, oh, you direct, oh, you write, oh, you whatever. And it was a little bit of like, if they gave me an inch, I'd take a mile, and then I didn't have to leave after a while, I mean, ultimately, that's how I got my job at MTV, was just like, hey, can I stay? And they were like, yeah, okay. And that was it, because I had done really good work. So that helps,
What is the biggest challenge in filmmaking?
Yeah.
Making it. Yeah, absolutely, 100% what James said. Making a film is the biggest challenge of making a film. It is one of the most difficult and most rewarding things you will ever do in your entire life. It does take a village. You do have to bring on all the people you know, and then some. And in the beginning, my first short film, we sold burritos to make enough money. My writer-director's family sold burritos. His sisters made great burritos. They made burritos, and they fed us all, and we used his cousin's house, and it was, and it really was this, but you know what? I'm still friends with all the people I made that first short film with. And it brings you together in a way that like nothing else does, except maybe theater. But film and the creative arts, I think it is such a collaborative thing. It is so challenging, but it's so ultimately amazingly rewarding.
I was just going to back it up for me personally, especially if you're a producer. It's deciding to make that film.
Yeah, yes.
Should I do this? It's going to be 3 years of my life. Because when you come on board as a producer or anybody at that level, you're making a commitment and you have to see it through. And the idea is you want to see something completed. Every project, that I was on as a producer, it did see its end. We finished. Maybe it didn't do what it wanted to do or the filmmaker wanted to do, but it's our job to commit to see it through. And that's a huge commitment if you're really coming on board for that. And sometimes it keeps you up at night. You're making those decisions. Is this the one? Is this going to be important? Am I, all the things that you want to question yourself. So
Trust yourself that you could do it, because it is a big leap of faith. So just
pull your resources.
yeah.
Great. Before we move on to our next segment, which is how to think outside the box, I just want to review real quick. What is a strategy? And how do you decide, like, your top 3? You don't want a dozen strategies when you're going into marketing something, right? So what is it, and how do you decide what your top priority is going to be on those strategies?
That's a great question. Sometimes we get the strategic lead from our clients, sometimes. But I would say we're currently right now, you guys all know what a brainstorming process is, right? Raise your hand if you do, right? And so it's, once we're given a film to market, there's a tremendous amount of research. Besides doing script coverage and getting ourselves involved in the project, we start a brainstorming process very early, and we just flood the document that we're working on with ideas. Just, again, why we're called black box is, it's an idea and we throw it in there and something comes out. So you want to be able to challenge everybody, and I think, and I look at a lot of you guys as young talent, because we've worked with so many young people that came in, finished out of college, and they come in. A lot of them were a little bit timid to come in, but usually they were the ones with the best ideas. So we try to apply it out of it. So in a brainstorming, we're not trying to put any limitations. Anything's open. And then that first document becomes the cornerstone for then what we start to do next is, okay, which way are we going to point the arrow? Because once we lean into a positioning on a strategy, we have to do it with everything, right? We don't want to, there's not a lot of going back. So it's that next phase where we start to consider, from the film's perspective, what is going to be the best strategic place to do it. And there's all sorts of other things that we talk about, what a 360 campaign is. Are we working on something global? Is it for the domestic U.S. market? Is it foreign language? We have so many different things to think about when we're moving into a film for the first time. But that strategic brainstorming is the first process that we go through, and then the elimination, and then it's like, okay, now we're going to move into this positioning for this film, and then we start to put our ideas down, like how are we going to move into that.
Let me give you a little bit of insight into how the process works at least for us. I don't want to speak for Black Box, but essentially, we will watch the film or the television series or whatever it is that we're being tasked with marketing. And then 10 to 15 of us will sit and just ideate into a Google Doc. We ideate in private and then we ideate as a group. But that document ends up being like 30 pages long of just, this would be cool, this would be cool, this would be cool. And then why? Why we like it, why we think that it's germane to the story or to the point that we're trying to make. But we toss out 90% of those ideas after we've had discussion and debate, and people will defend their cool idea for this Instagram thing idea, or we're gonna make this cool activation out on the Las Vegas Strip or something like that, right? So we have enough people at our disposal to just sit and ideate. And we've allowed ourselves the time to sit and ideate. Because once we've gotten through this 30-page document, which we labor over, I mean, and to say that it comes quick and dirty, it does not. Like, it takes a great deal of time and attention and creativity from you as an individual, which is not to say, like, it's exhausting, you know what I mean? To ultimately end up with that 30-page document, but it's even harder to whittle it down to 3 pages, And so but that's our process. Our process is to take every idea, good or bad. If you think that it has an audience, write it down. And we all do it into this big Google Doc, and then we just, the producer, and usually, like, the producer, their manager, like the account manager, and a couple of other, like, people that you sort of just draw in to work on it with you, and your head of creative and things like that, we'll whittle it down. We'll go through and just be like, this is not going to work. Like, this is going to cost $1 bajillion. That's not going to work. But we also take our cues from the studio or from the filmmaker or from the producers, like, oh, we really want to do an activation. Oh, we really want to do some experiential marketing. Oh, we really want to build something really new or unique, or we want to leverage influencers. We want to leverage a brand. We want to leverage all these other things. And so we take all that stuff into consideration as we ideate. But that's the process. I mean, and this is the point of the story is that this process is available to all of you as well. Because there is nothing stopping you from pulling in 10 or 15 of the people who have some knowledge of your project, right? Your DP, your editor, your whatever. Saying, hey guys, Thursday night, I'm gonna buy us a bunch of pizzas. Please come with a page of ideas for, like, cool stuff that you think people would like about this movie. And then you whittle it down and you have a good time doing it. I mean, that's really, like, what it boils down to, is it's supposed to be fun. Yeah. It's supposed to be fun.
It is actually, for marketing companies, it is the fun box. It is the best, and as you were talking, I have so many stories from. We worked on a movie called Life of Pi, and I remember somebody in the group had a personal experience, with something that was, kind of like in the movie, and that actually came out. So all that type of thing, the things that James had mentioned, all these different types of ways of going, the brainstorming process and sitting down and capitalizing on everybody's talents is really the fun of it. And then you got to then pick some ideas, and then you got to move forward.
You got to kill some good ones.
Oh yeah,
Man,
yes,
it hurts so bad when you kill a good one.
But I think in the end, how you get to the last few is the ones that deeply resonate with you the strongest. Because if they feel authentic to you, they will feel authentic to your audience, and your audience will connect with them. So I think a lot of it is trusting, it comes back to what's the most challenging thing? You got to trust yourself to do it. How do you figure out the top 3 things of your strategy? What feels in your gut like the strongest choices? It really does come down a lot to you really knowing your content and having faith in it and being passionate about it and continuously supporting that gut feeling that is not based on anything other than your own internal process and passion for this, and just trusting it and going with it.
I'll say this too. Sorry, just real quick, I'll tack this on. You guys know what film marketing looks like, right? Mm-hmm. So whenever you see this good idea on your brain dump page, you know it's a good idea after you've whittled it down, because you've all been marketed to your entire lives. So you know what a campaign looks like, whether you know it with, like, some level of expertise, like we have, or like these two have. You feel it. You know when it's the right idea. You know when you're onto something, because you have a lifetime of being marketed to.
And I think there's also from that perspective too, for Black Box, it's also pushing the envelope, You know, there's so many things that I can think about that came up that weren't possible before, and then technology allowed it to be possible. So it's, you know, that free thinking. You know, we actually have to end our process and then deliver our ideas to the studios, because they will select too. This isn't just say, hey, this is the way we're doing it. Sometimes we push pretty hard on an idea that we feel very passionate about, and then we luckily have a good partnership with the studio that will get involved. But I can remember so many different things like breakouts on landing pages and all these cool things that weren't possible, say 10 or 15 years ago, that someone would come up with it, like, hey, what if we break this page on Facebook? Can we do that? Let's try, you know, let's call it. So, you know, having partnerships with, you know, companies like Facebook or a Google, or, you know, in developing those can also help, you know, push a good idea forward.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, next slide, please. We are going on to our next segment called How to Think Outside the Box, and I like to call it How to Do It the New Way, which is Black Box Media and Switches and Modes Creative Agency. So let's talk about that.
Well, it's kind of building on what Frank just said, is that, you know, you and what James said too about you being marketed to your whole life, and you've seen the cool things that happen. I think it's like, okay, how many times have you guys had a conversation about a film or a video game or something that's saying, wow, that was really cool, but what if they had done this and this and that? Like, that would be even cooler, right? We've all had those ideas. That's thinking outside the box. It's taking something that's already been done, it's worked, and then saying, but what if we flipped it outside of the box, flipped it on top of its head, and came at it in a completely different direction, and then applied our particular creative spin on it? That, you know, it's really just being open to infinite possibilities and not boxing yourself in.
You just made me think of, like, you know, obviously I'm from Los Angeles, and our offices are in Hollywood. I remember, not that I'm saying everybody should do this, but thinking outside the box. I don't remember which film it was. So I'm going down Vine, right, and heading down to the office, and there's all these police cars and fire engines, and I'm like, what the heck? And the roads are blocked off, and I'm sure it went viral, but there was a guy, I think he was from Vegas. He had duct taped himself to a billboard. Did anybody see this?
That was Steve-O.
Oh, that's Steve-O. Yes, that was Steve-O. Thank
yeah.
you. And I'm like, what in God's name? He's pushing the envelope. So to Karen's point, and I'm sure, James, you have tons of stories, is, you know, especially for independent filmmakers, you know, I think you guys are, you know, the ones that are thinking outside the box the most. Don't tell the studios who said that. But, you know, they have to do things in a certain way, but you can, without putting yourself in danger, you can stay safe, yes, but you can do extraordinary things to get attention, and especially depending on what your film is, or your idea, or your story. But there's so much stuff out there, and there's those first movers where somebody did, wow, and then somebody will capitalize on that. For Minions, if you know Hollywood, they wrapped the entire, we were on part of that game, the arc, like the dome. The dome, they took the dome and they wrapped it, you know, and it was really mind-blowing. So there's stuff that's outside of the box that people are thinking of, and usually it comes from an independent mind that's like, hey, what if we do this?
I think there's a lot of pressure put on creatives to, like, ooh, think outside the box. We really don't harp on that point. Like, when we create these brain dump documents, these brainstorms, I don't know that anybody's trying to think outside the box as much as not just, they're trying not to turn in an idea that is obvious. You know what I mean? We know, for sure, we're gonna have to cut a trailer. That's nuts and bolts kind of stuff, right? For the campaign to function, you gotta have it pieced together with your nuts and bolts, right? You have to have regular social media posts, you have to have stills from your show or from your movie, so that way you have a constant contact with your audience and things like that. So we do the nuts and bolts stuff, but nobody turns those ideas in. We already know we're gonna do them. You know what I mean? And so in that document, that's all of your out-of-the-box thinking, because no one wants to turn in an idea that's obvious in a group of people who are all effectively competing with each other. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to have the best idea, even though there's no reward specifically for that person to get that great idea. But there is a passion that we all have for making really cool stuff. you know? And that helps the filmmakers have their films be seen. And that has these really successful campaigns because our livelihoods depend on us doing well as well. You know what I mean? And so I think that ultimately, again, like not to sound like a broken record, but you've all been marketed to your whole life. You know what the nuts and bolts of a campaign are. And you're not going to write those down on the top of your contribution to that brain dump document. You know what I mean? And so I think that you have it in you to think outside the box anyway. And so it's just a matter of picking the winners out of that list of ideas and running with them. And sometimes a winner idea may be one that was very inside the box. I don't know. But if it's successful, it's successful. You know, and that's really, at the end of the day, what matters.
Everything is content.
Yeah.
But it comes down to, like, let's say you're writing a story and you have a couple of choices for your bad guy in your story. But you don't know what the bad guy's name should be. You can't decide yourself. You could post on social media to your followers who are following this process of your story and say, hey, let's do a poll, A, B, and C, and whoever, whichever one is the one that's the right name, we're going to give you a DVD when we make the movie, or we'll give you a t-shirt or a hat or whatever. You've then just marketed your film to your audience, engaged them, had them participate, and had them become invested, personally invested in the success of your project. All from just talking to them over like a social media platform to actually get them involved in that process. That is content.
Depending on where you're at in the process, sometimes you're the content, because exactly to Karen's point, like I'm working on this idea, I'm gonna put up a poll, I'm gonna tweet something out, I'm gonna make a TikTok about this thing I'm doing, right? And there's filmmakers now that are starting to discover these platforms that they're the content, right? So you're a director and you're getting ready to make your movie, you're getting ready to do your Kickstarter or whatever it is that you're doing for fundraising. You make a TikTok, you say, hey, I'm James Glover, I'm making this movie, I'd really love for you guys to join me on the process. And then you just document the process. You're not doing anything you're not already doing. You're making your movie, you know? You're just documenting it along the way, if that's the route you think that is going to connect with an audience. Some people don't have the personality for it or the social media acumen to be the person on camera, but I bet one of your actors do, or one of your producers, or somebody on your team, right? Maybe they spearhead the effort. Sometimes you're the content. People want to know the process too. I mean, it's, you know. Manage your community. Real quick about engagement. Manage your community. Read your comments, reply to your comments, engage your audience, because if you have a video that goes viral, or you have a video that doesn't go viral, and you've gotten comments galore or one or two, like, they're all valuable. The one or two comments that you got on a video that was seen by what's the TikTok limit, 153 or something like that, and then they stopped pushing it out, but like, or 258 now. But so you reply to those comments. Those are your people. Those are the people that are going to go and see your movie. You know, and okay, you only got one or two, that's a bummer, but manage your community, manage your engagement, participate in it. It's not this kind of thing where we like send it out and we post, there's no way to manage the engagement on a billboard, per se.
And in marketing, that's actually a job, a community manager on a studio or account. Like we have what they call an agency of record account. So we have a few of those, and we have community managers whose entire job is to manage that community for that studio of that particular part of the brand. Yeah. And we get more into specifics about it, but it's so crucial. And we have one that we've had for, I think, almost 10 years, a studio that we've been managing a specific part of the community, and we've seen the elevation of it. And to James's point, it's a really important, crucial process. You've got to basically caretake. People want to know what's going on with that brand, and you're managing that community.
Okay, I have two questions. So it seems like the essence of like marketing is rooted in finding like that target audience. What do you do when a filmmaker comes to you and they say they want to target everyone? And how do you find like that niche, and where are they? How do you find them?
Great question.
Sometimes we have to educate the filmmakers a little bit. Like, not to sound unkind, but like sometimes we have to teach them what they don't know. You know what I mean? And it creates a bigger challenge, ultimately. Like, if you don't have a really firm grasp of what your film is, it takes time and effort to unpack that, especially after the fact. And we have had filmmakers, I'm sure you guys too, that is like, oh, this is it's a 4-quadrant, we're gonna market to everybody. And that, generally speaking, just isn't true. You know what I mean? Outside of Pixar movies, I suppose. Maybe some DreamWorks movies.
It's also, but it's a great question because it also begs back to history again. You know, some of us grew up when we had this little thing, television, that was just pumping out a few channels. And so they were reaching a wide audience because that's all the content that you could watch. You were fed exactly what somebody decided to deliver you. But in this day and age, it's very different. It goes back to that enormous amount of content, to your point. So if a filmmaker says, I want to hit everybody, you know, the education process starts. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But we need to look at the content or the film or whatever you're creating to really decide who should see it. You know, HBO was on the forefront when it launched as a channel or network, you know, to come out because they were looking to segment audiences, underserved audience that were never given their due for the content they wanted to see. And so now we as marketers have a job to really be laser focused, at least on who we think would want to watch and gravitate this, and then it can go from there.
Well, and I just wanted to add that if you are a writer or a director or a producer and you decide that you want to jump into the fray and create this project, you absolutely should know who your audience is and who you're trying to reach. And it's not everyone. And if you read your script and you go really through it and say, who is this going to speak to? Would this have spoken to me when I was 15? Or when I'm going to be 30 or whatever? Is it something that appeals to myself and my friends, or is it something, you know, my parents and their demographic are going to be more interested in? You absolutely should know that, because that is going to drive absolutely every aspect of your creative, is knowing your story and knowing who is going to resonate with your story, connect with your story. So it starts with the story and then it moves forward from there.
So based off your guys' knowledge of algorithms, which platform do you think is the most effective to get the widest reach? Where sometimes like you'll put a post out there and it only shows to 15 people, and if they don't like it, then it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't reach a wider audience. So that's where that one's coming from. And now that these platforms like TikTok will sometimes pay us based on how many views, does that go towards the marketing of the film or to just the person that put it up?
Great questions. I might also turn to James on this one, but I might just say, you know, from our perspective, I said early on, as a marketing company, we still remain agnostic to platforms because we are going to use them for the very purposes. But James is probably far more knowledgeable to answer your questions on the algorithm aspect. So I might turn it to that. But I just want to let you know, from our perspective, we're still remaining agnostic so that we can look at how we might use it for the purpose of the film.
And I was just going to say, it's the exact same thing. It's based on the story and who the target audience is, because different platforms have different demographics. So you're going to strategize what platform is going to be best for the type of campaign that you're doing and the audience you're trying to reach. It may be a Facebook group is a better way to build community than TikTok. If you're trying to reach an older demographic who are kind of taking over Facebook but aren't really great at engaging in Facebook groups. And if it's kids, you're doing really fun stuff, or you're doing a video game, you're probably going to go out to TikTok. So I think it does depend somewhat on the story, who is the audience for that story, and how best do you reach that audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really does depend on your audience, in the sense that best practices for that type of audience prevails across all platforms. TikTok's the one that's a little bit different because with Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, we can sort of make content across all four and have it live that way. It dies on TikTok for the most part because that is a direct platform, right? You have a direct one-to-one connection with whoever's on the other end of the device. And so the marketing does change for that somewhat. And that's kind of where I was going back to, sometimes you're the content. That's a great place for that to go, is TikTok. TikTok is going to overwhelm the other platforms, in my prediction, only because of the speed at which you can consume things, right? And it's with Instagram, they're changing their algorithm to keep pace. Now they're no longer leading. They're not the leading edge of social media. Now they're trying to keep up. And you see it across the other platforms, right? We got introduced to Reels. We got introduced to the YouTube Shorts. It's all just TikTok light, you know what I mean? And so, but we're making content for those platforms because it is still finding an audience, regardless of like if it feels slightly lesser than. And we don't know. We don't know what the next platform is going to be or how you're going to connect with your audience on it. But paying attention to what the best practices are, and there is gobs and gobs and gobs of information out there about Instagram changed their algorithm. Here's how it affects you and stuff like that. Read those because they're usually right. And you can follow a roadmap that somebody that is an expert in that one thing, in manipulating just the algorithm and manipulating just that platform. Find out what they're doing. And it was kind of like we were saying before, like, go find those people that are making this stuff. Go find those filmmakers that are going viral on TikTok. Go find those posts that are doing really well on Instagram, or those activations out in the world that like we did a 3D billboard, and it's like this thing like comes out the middle in New York City on 5th and Broadway, and we saw it when our PA went and like videotaped it, or recorded it on his phone. But then I saw it 7,000 more times because people pointed their phone at it and posted, "This is cool." That was it, you know what I mean? And it got traction outside of it being just a bug out 3D billboard. But it got traction on social media because it was different and it was cool and it looked unique. You know what I mean? And so like that's one of those things where like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever, like it can live across all platforms, that cool 3D billboard or that cool activation or whatever it is. But ultimately, like it's already on there. And so if you go and you look and just do some very basic couple of hours of research, just going through the platforms and finding out why it's, who's having success, what's their frequency of posting, what type of content are they doing, and then look at what type of content they have on other platforms, right? So there's a filmmaker that I follow, and he's been trying to get his movie made for about 2 years now. And he's posting to TikTok probably like 2-3 times a week, and he's getting success with that. But when you look at his other content on YouTube, on Twitter, it's not even remotely close to it. It's short form, it's skits, it's short form content about other things that he's working on, things like that. And that's working there. And so it's this like two-pronged approach. So you can test and learn along the way as you're going. And like Mr. Beast, I don't know if these kids are. They know who Mr. Beast is. But like Jimmy, the guy who is Mr. Beast, famously has spent $1 million just A/B testing thumbnails. And his content hits millions of viewers within 5 or 6 minutes of it going live. You know what I mean? But it's because there has been this very strict, regimented, and purposeful process put in place in order to A/B test these things that work and don't work. And they'll labor over an edit for months in order to get it right. And he, has a rare miss here and there, but it's almost always consistently a hit, And it's because it is relentless in its data and its drive for finding out the answer to the question, will this go viral? Will this be a hit? Will someone click on this? And the answer is, after a lot of time and attention and effort and money, the answer is yes.
My question is really about, we've talked a lot about marketing to consumers and the things that you can do. When you have an independent film, of course you need to get distribution. So I'd love to hear your strategic and tactical best practices for marketing to distributors.
Good question.
That is what a lot of your materials can be for. When you create a pitch deck or a sizzle reel or a trailer or things like that, imagery and things that support your project, you're going to typically use those and focus those on financiers and distribution. When you write out what you are going to do in like your pitch deck, for instance, and you want to go and pitch your project to a streaming network like a Netflix or a Hulu or Amazon, you're going to focus on what they are looking for that your project matches. And so it does do, and Frank does a lot of this kind of, sort of research into what are the studios looking for, what are the decision makers looking for. We had been working on an animated kids series, television series, and they'll tell you, we want 4 to 6, we want 22-minute episodes, we want, da-da-da. And then, so when you go to pitch to them and to market to them, you will take your regular pitch deck and then orchestrate it to highlight, whether it's resorting it, whether it's bringing a few more details to the front, maybe community is really important to them, so you put that at the front instead of at the end. And your deck should be malleable so that you can focus it and strategically kind of aim it at what they are actually looking for to make you as desirable as you can possibly be to what they are paying money to pick up. Does that help? Does that make sense? It's like you're really, and so you have to do some research. If you are an independent filmmaker and you haven't signed up for like the free deadlines or the free varieties or free Hollywood, get those, because there's a lot of articles that come out. Go out and look at websites. Look at distribution conferences. For animation, there's a great one for Kids Screen where all of the buyers come and they all will tell you what they want. Do online conferences, things like that, where you have decision makers actually saying what they are looking for, because that is going to drive your marketing for your film. Like Apple TV does a lot of stuff that's got music in it. So if you have a music-based film, Apple TV, because they have a music platform, right? So it makes sense. And, Coda was very successful on that. And even though music was sort of a peripheral part of the storyline, it was very much a part of the storyline, and they were very successful on Apple TV. So I think that, it's those kinds of finding those little niches. You know what you like, and if there's something out there similar to your storyline, like a streamer that has those type of films, like an Apple TV or HBO or something like that, then you already know what they're looking for because you're watching their content. So then you structure your deck to have those kinds of highlighted bits and pieces of your film in as artistic and creative a way as you can, and that will help you grab that attention that you're looking for.
Be prepared. Come with all of your materials. Like, think through the things that they're going to ask you for. Think through the things that you're going to need. Think through the things that are going to help them. Because ultimately, like, they're buying a product from you that they think they can sell. And if you have an audience through your TikTok following, or if you've built up your marketing campaign in advance and things like that, if you can go, the more you can go to them with a product that's ready to sell, the more success you're going to have ultimately, because it makes it easier to say yes to you.
Are you familiar with AFM, the American Film Market? Yeah, this is coming up. I was just thinking of that because, that's where everybody would go to, for feature films and independent films. And I remember all the stunts, like when I was going very early, and all the stunts that were being done. But I think it's being prepared and coming with everything that you have, ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry that I have to cut us off with these amazing people. Please thank Frank Donner, Karen Criswell, and James Glover for their time.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being such an engaged audience. You were amazing.
I'm glad you. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you so much. And once again, please thank our panelists.